The clanging iron of Olympic dreams clashes with a suburban nightmare. When a coach's dedication to his nation's athletes is threatened by a petty complaint, the battle lines are drawn. You won't believe how far one man will go to protect his team and his honor. Don't miss what happens next as the fight goes viral. This abomination of noise. Mr. Banks has to stop, and it has to stop now. The words, laced with the venom that Tyrese Banks hadn't encountered since his roughest days in the Bronx, sliced through the humid Las Vegas air. He'd paused mid-sentence, his hand still raised to emphasize a point on lumbar stability to Maria Sanchez, one of Team USA's brightest Olympic powerlifting hopefuls. The rhythmic clang of iron, the grunts of exertion, the motivational rap thumping from the oversized speaker, the soundtrack to national glory in Tyrese's mind, all died down as his athletes sensed the shift in the atmosphere. Before him stood Paul King, a man whose face seemed permanently frozen in a rictus of disapproval. King was 55, with a neatly trimmed silver haircut that belied the unkempt rage in his eyes. He clutched a sheaf of papers like a condemnatory writ, his knuckles white. His golf shirt, a pastel yellow that did nothing to soften his demeanor, was stretched taut over a slight paunch. He was, Tyrese knew from the brief, unpleasant encounters they'd had since Tyrese moved into the rented Las Vegas house 3 months prior. A prominent member of the Homeowners Association. Tyrese, 38 years old and built like a mountain forged from raw determination, wiped a bead of sweat from his brow. His journey from the project hallways of the Bronx to the coaching pinnacle of USA Olympic powerlifting was etched into every line of his face, every scar on his knuckles, every carefully controlled movement. He'd faced down street toughs, biased judges, and the crushing weight of expectation. A disgruntled HOA member in a sun-drenched suburb should have been a footnote. Mr. King, Tyrese began, his voice a low rumble that usually commanded instant respect from world-class athletes. We're training here. For the Olympics, this is important work. He gestured vaguely to the impressive, if somewhat cramped, setup in his converted 3-car garage, 3 power racks, platforms, enough weights to ballast a small ship, and the ever-present American flags draped alongside Team USA banners. Jasmine Lee, ESPN's acclaimed cinematographer, lowered her camera slightly, her usually impassive professional face now etched with a flicker of curiosity. At 32, she had a reputation for capturing the raw, unfiltered emotion behind sporting endeavors, and her lens had been focused on Tyrese's unique, intense coaching style for the past week. This, she probably sensed, was an unexpected bonus scene. King scoffed, a sound like air hissing from a punctured tire. Important work. What's important, Mr. Banks, is the peace and tranquility of this neighborhood. Article 7, Section B of the HOA covenants clearly states, he brandished the papers, that no resident shall cause or permit any noxious or offensive activity or anything which may be or become an annoyance or nuisance to the neighborhood. He punctuated annoyance or nuisance with a jab of his finger toward the 400 pounds Maria had just deadlifted. This thumping, this crashing, it's a terrible noise. It's unbearable. My wife has migraines. One of the younger lifters, a kid named Marcus from Detroit with shoulders as wide as a doorway, snorted. Tyrese shot him a quelling glance. Losing his cool wouldn't help. He needed this space. With the National Training Center undergoing unexpected renovations, finding suitable last-minute locations for his elite athletes had been a logistical nightmare. This Las Vegas house, with its large garage and relative privacy, or so he'd thought, had seemed like a godsend. Sir, I understand you have concerns, Tyrese said, choosing his words carefully. He was used to navigating bureaucracy, but this felt different, more personal. We train during reasonable hours, usually between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. We're not running a commercial gym here. These are America's athletes, preparing to represent our country. I don't care if they're training to go to the moon. King's voice rose, cracking slightly. This is a residential area. People expect to be able to enjoy their homes, their patios, their swimming pools. Without this cacophony, he stepped closer, invading Tyrese's personal space. Tyrese stood his ground, a study in controlled power. He was a good foot taller than King and outweighed him by at least 100 pounds of solid muscle, but he kept his hands loose at his sides. "My windows rattle," King insisted, his face reddening. "My dog barks incessantly. I've had complaints from other neighbors too. They're just too intimidated by all this." He gestured vaguely at the athletes, who were now watching with undisguised interest, to say anything themselves. Tyrese doubted that. Most of the neighbors he'd met had been curious, even supportive. Once they understood what was happening, a couple had even brought over cookies. "If there are specific times that are more problematic," Tyrese offered, still attempting diplomacy, "perhaps we can adjust our heaviest lifting schedules." King seemed to take this as a sign of weakness. "Adjust nom de Mr. Banks. This isn't about adjustment. This is about cessation. This illegal home business of yours needs to be shut down permanently." He tapped the papers again. "This is a formal warning. If this gym isn't dismantled and the noise completely eradicated within 48 hours, the HOA will commence legal action. We will sue you for every penny you've got, and we will have an injunction slapped on this property so fast your head will spin. We have an excellent legal team." The air crackled. The casual threat of financial ruin, the dismissal of his life's work, the sheer audacity of it, it all landed on Tyrese like a physical blow. He thought of the sacrifices his own athletic career cut short by injury, the years spent learning his craft, the countless hours poured into these young men and women, molding them into champions, all to be derailed by a man offended by the sound of hard work. Jasmine, and ever the professional, had discreetly raised her camera again, capturing the confrontation. Her lens seemed to find the tightening in Tyrese's jaw, the dangerous glint that entered his eyes. "Mr. King," Tyrese said, his voice dropping to a deadly quiet, the Bronx steel now unmistakably present. "You seem to be under a grave misunderstanding. This isn't a home business. This is a matter of national importance, and I don't respond well to threats." King, perhaps finally sensing he'd pushed too far against something far more formidable than a non-compliant hedge, took a small, involuntary step back, but his face remained a mask of self-righteous indignation. "You'll be hearing from our lawyers," he spat, before turning on his heel and marching stiffly down the driveway, the sheaf of papers still clutched in his hand like a holy relic. The athletes looked at Tyrese. The silence in the garage was now heavier than any barbell. Maria Sanchez finally broke it. "What are we going to do?" Coach Tyrese stared at the empty space where Paul King had stood. The Nevada sun beat down, and for a moment the opulence of Las Vegas felt like a cruel joke. He had 48 hours. 48 hours before a suburban squabble threatened to derail Olympic dreams, including his own. He balled his fists, the familiar calluses a comfort. This wasn't just about noise. This was about respect. This was about the right to pursue excellence. He looked at Jasmine, who met his gaze, her camera still rolling. An idea, audacious and risky, began to form in his mind. Paul King wanted to make noise. Tyrese Banks would show him what real power sounded like. He'd make a noise that would resonate far beyond the manicured lawns of this Las Vegas cul-de-sac. "Don't worry, Maria," Tyrese said, a slow, determined smile spreading across his face. "We're going to keep training, and Mr. King is about to find out what happens when you try to silence the lions." He clapped his hands together, the sound sharp and decisive. "All right, team, let's get back to work. Let them hear us. Let them hear the sound of dedication." The clang of weights resumed, louder this time, more defiant. Jasmine Lee's camera zoomed in on Tyrese's resolute expression. The battle had just begun. Later that evening, a certified letter arrived. It was from the Ashworth Estates Homeowners Association, formalizing Paul King's threats, detailing potential fines, legal fees, and the demand for the immediate cessation of all training activities. The 48-hour countdown was official. The certified letter lay on the kitchen counter, its crisp formality a stark contrast to the raw, visceral energy that usually pulsed through Tyrese Banks's temporary Las Vegas home. 48 hours. It felt like a countdown clock to a bomb, each tick amplified by the oppressive silence that had fallen now that the day's training session was over. Tyrese stared at the document, the legalese swimming before his eyes. Cease and desist. Violation of covenants. Potential for significant financial penalties. It was a language designed to intimidate, to crush resistance before it could even form. His athletes had dispersed, their usual boisterous post-workout chatter replaced by worried murmurs and anxious glances in his direction. He tried to project confidence, clapping Marcus on the shoulder and telling Maria she'd hit a personal best despite the interruption. But the unease was palpable. These young men and women had poured their lives into this Olympic dream, trusting him to guide them, to protect them from the myriad distractions and obstacles that littered the path to glory. Now their sanctuary, their meticulously crafted training environment, was under siege because of noise complaints. It felt absurd, insulting. Sleep offered little respite that night. Tyrese found himself pacing the rented house, the ghosts of his Bronx upbringing whispering in his ear. He remembered the constant struggle for space, for respect, the feeling of being perpetually underestimated, of having to fight for every inch. He'd thought those battles were behind him, relegated to the narrative of his rise. Yet here he was, in a supposedly tranquil Las Vegas suburb, facing a similar fight, albeit one cloaked in the polite tyranny of HOA regulations. The next morning, the atmosphere in the garage gym was heavy. Every dropped weight, every grunt of exertion, even the music, now played at a conspicuously lower volume, seemed to echo with the threat of Paul King's ultimatum. Lifters who usually attacked the barbells with explosive ferocity were hesitant, their movements almost furtive. Tyrese saw it in their eyes, the worry that any undue sound might bring King, or worse, the authorities, to their door. "All right, people, listen up," Tyrese called out, his voice firm, cutting through the subdued sounds. "We have a situation. You all know it, but let me be clear. We are not shutting down. We are not backing down." He saw a few shoulders straighten, a flicker of hope in some eyes. This facility, this training, it's not just for us. It's for our country. Mr. King and his HOA want to silence us with paperwork and threats. They're banking on us folding. They don't understand what we're about. Jasmine Lee, ever present with her camera, moved silently around the periphery, capturing the tension, the quiet determination on Tyrese's face, the mixed emotions of the athletes. She hadn't said much since King's visit, but her perceptive gaze missed nothing. Tyrese spent the precious hours between coaching sets on his laptop, frantically researching Nevada HOA laws, trying to find a loophole, a precedent, anything that could give them leverage. He made calls to USA Powerlifting's legal department, but the initial feedback was disheartening. HOAs, especially in planned communities like Ashworth Estates, wielded considerable power. Disputes often devolved into costly, protracted legal battles, a distraction he and his team could ill afford so close to the Olympics. The pressure was immense. He wasn't just a coach, he was a mentor, a father figure to some of these kids. He carried their hopes on his broad shoulders. Failure wasn't an option, but the path forward was shrouded in a fog of legal jargon and suburban animosity. Late that afternoon, as the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the driveway, the escalation Tyrese had half expected arrived. It wasn't Paul King this time, but a uniformed security guard from a private company contracted by the HOA. The guard, a young man who looked barely out of his teens and clearly uncomfortable, handed Tyrese another official-looking envelope. "Sir," the guard said, avoiding eye contact, "I've been instructed to deliver this and to monitor the noise levels from the street." He gestured vaguely with his thumb towards his parked vehicle, which had Ashworth Estates Security Patrol emblazoned on the side. This new letter was even more aggressive. It cited specific decibel readings allegedly taken by King himself using a smartphone app. Tyrese noted with a grimace of contempt that supposedly violated local noise ordinances, conveniently omitting the fact that these ordinances often had exemptions for daytime activities or lacked the strict enforcement King implied. It reiterated the 48-hour deadline, now less than 24 hours away, and added a new threat if the nuisance wasn't abated. The HOA would not only pursue legal action, but also file formal complaints with the city, potentially leading to fines and even misdemeanor charges. They were trying to bury him in paper, to make the fight so onerous he'd simply give up. The athletes, who had gathered around, watched with growing anger and frustration. Maria Sanchez, usually the most composed, spoke up, her voice trembling slightly. "This is insane, coach. They're treating us like criminals. We're just trying to train." Tyrese clenched his jaw. The security guard, still lurking by the curb, was a visible symbol of their oppression, a constant reminder that they were being watched, judged. This was no longer just about noise. It was a deliberate, targeted harassment. It was Jasmine who broke the grim tableau. She lowered her camera, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Coach," she said, her voice calm and clear. "They're using rules and intimidation, but they're operating in the shadows, relying on letters and perceived authority." She paused, then looked directly at him, her eyes shining with an idea. "What if you bring this into the light? What if you show the world what they're trying to shut down?" Tyrese looked at her, then at his team, their faces a mixture of defiance and despair. He looked at the American flag hanging on the wall. Jasmine's words resonated. He had been focused on fighting their fight on their terms, legal battles, negotiations. But King and the HOA weren't interested in a fair fight. They wanted capitulation. "What are you suggesting?" "Jasmine," he asked, though a spark had already ignited in his mind. "I've been filming for a week," she said. "I have hours of footage of these athletes pouring their heart and soul into their training. I have footage of you coaching them, inspiring them. I have footage of Mr. King's visit yesterday and the security guard today." She gestured towards her equipment. "The world runs on stories, coach, and you have a powerful one. They're accusing you of creating a nuisance. What if you show everyone that this nuisance is the sound of Olympic dedication, the sound of American pride?" The idea bloomed, bold and audacious, a direct appeal to public opinion, bypassing the HOA's bureaucratic stranglehold. A video, a viral video. "They want to talk about terrible noise," Tyrese mused, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across his face. He looked at the weights, the racks, the determined faces of his athletes. "Let's show them what that noise really represents. Let's show them the strength, the sacrifice, the spirit of Team USA." He turned to Marcus. "Son, what's the heaviest you've ever squatted?" Marcus, momentarily startled, replied, 800 pounds. "Coach, in training. Think you can do it again tomorrow?" For the camera, for everyone to see what this HOA is trying to stop. A grin split Marcus's face. "Coach, I'll lift whatever you tell me to." The mood in the garage shifted. The oppressive weight of the HOA's threats didn't disappear, but it was now counterbalanced by a surge of defiant energy. They had a new strategy, a way to fight back that resonated with their identities as athletes, as performers, as representatives of something bigger than themselves. "Jasmine," Tyrese said, turning to the filmmaker, "you think you can put something together, something raw, powerful, something that will make some noise of its own?" Jasmine Lee smiled, a rare, brilliant flash of enthusiasm. "Coach, I live for this. We'll get it done. We'll need to work fast. What's your message?" Tyrese looked into the lens of her camera, imagining it was the eyes of the world. "My message is simple," he declared, his voice ringing with conviction. "This is Tyrese Banks, coach for the USA Olympic power lifting team. We're here in Las Vegas, training to bring home the gold. And this is what dedication sounds like. He gestured to the gym around him. The Ashworth Estates HOA wants to shut us down, says we're a nuisance. We say this is the sound of American dreams being forged in iron and sweat. They've given us an ultimatum. Now we're giving them one. See our work, hear our story, and then tell us if this is something that should be silenced. The deadline was still ticking. But now Tyrese Banks wasn't just waiting for it, he was preparing to meet it head on, armed not with lawyers, but with the truth, a camera, and the unyielding spirit of his Olympic hopefuls. The fight was about to go public. The next 20 hours were a blur of focused intensity, a race against Paul King's arbitrary deadline, but now imbued with a defiant purpose. The garage gym transformed into a makeshift film set. Jasmine Lee was in her element, a whirlwind of quiet efficiency. She directed the athletes not to perform for the camera, but to channel their frustrations, their hopes, their raw power into every lift, every movement. The clang of barbells became a soundtrack of rebellion, the grunts of exertion a chorus of defiance. Jasmine's lens was unflinching. It captured the sweat dripping from Marcus's brow as he loaded plate after plate onto the bar for his monumental 800-pound squat. His eyes fixed on a point beyond the garage wall, a vision of Olympic glory. It lingered on Maria Sanchez's face, a mask of serene concentration as she bench-pressed a weight that would make most men weep, the subtle tremor in her arms betraying the immense effort. It zoomed in on the calloused hands of the lifters, the tautness of their muscles, the unwavering support they offered each other. And then, while it was Tyrese's turn, Jasmine positioned him amidst his team, the American flag a prominent backdrop. He spoke directly to the camera, not as a victim, but as a proud coach, a defender of dreams. He didn't whine or plead. He laid out the facts, who they were, what they were doing, and the ultimatum they faced from the Ashworth Estates HOA. He spoke of dedication, sacrifice, and national pride. He named Paul King. He named the HOA. He didn't raise his voice, but the controlled fury, the unshakable conviction in his words, was more potent than any shout. "They call this noise," Tyrese said, his gaze steady and challenging. "We call this the sound of America striving for excellence. They want to shut down an Olympic dream because it disturbs their peace. We ask you, the American people, is this the kind of peace we want? The kind that stifles greatness in its cradle?" He finished with a simple, powerful call to action. Share this video if you believe Team USA deserves a place to train, a place to pursue victory without apology. Let the Ashworth Estates HOA know what you think of their priorities. Jasmine worked through the night, fueled by coffee and the infectious energy of the team, who hovered around, offering assistance, watching her weave their reality into a compelling narrative. She skillfully intercut the powerful lifting footage with snippets of King's aggressive confrontation, the arrival of the security guard, and the cold, impersonal text of the HOA's letters. She layered it with a subtle, driving soundtrack that amplified the emotion without overshadowing the raw sounds of the gym. The final cut was just under 3 minutes, short, punchy, and devastatingly effective. With less than 2 hours remaining on the HOA's clock, Jasmine uploaded the video to several major social media platforms, tagging ESPN, major news outlets, prominent athletes, and even a few celebrity accounts known for their patriotism or advocacy against bullying. The title was stark: Las Vegas HOA tries to cripple Team USA Olympic training. You decide. The initial response was a trickle, then a stream, then an uncontrollable flood. The video struck a chord. It was a David versus Goliath story, a tale of bureaucratic overreach clashing with inspiring dedication. Comments poured in by the thousands, overwhelmingly supportive of Tyrese and his team. Let them train HOAs are out of control. Paul King should be ashamed. This is un-American hashtags like hashtag let them lift, Team USA trains. Here, and college show a overreach began trending. ESPN picked it up first, sharing it on their main social media feeds with the caption, "Raw power, raw passion, In a raw deal, Team USA powerlifting coach Tyrese Banks faces eviction from his training facility by his HOA. What are your thoughts? Other sports news outlets quickly followed, then mainstream news sites. By noon, the video had millions of views. Paul King likely woke up to a digital firestorm. His name, his HOA, Ashworth Estates, were suddenly infamous. The HOA's usually sleepy Facebook page was inundated with one-star reviews and angry comments. Their office phone, Tyrese imagined with grim satisfaction, was probably ringing off the hook. The shift in power was palpable. Yesterday, Tyrese had been the one on the defensive, scrambling for legal options. Today, the HOA was in the crosshairs of national public opinion. Around 3 p.m., just as Tyrese was gathering his team to discuss their next steps, his phone rang. It was an unknown number. He let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, it rang again. Same number. He answered, putting it on speaker. Mr. Banks, this is Eleanor Vance, president of the Ashworth Estates Homeowners Association. Her voice was strained, a stark contrast to the confident, threatening tone of their official letters. Tyrese waited. The athletes exchanged triumphant glances. Jasmine kept her camera rolling. Discreetly. Mr. Banks. Vance continued, a clear note of panic in her voice. We've seen the video. There seems to have been a misunderstanding, a gross misrepresentation of the HOA's intentions. Tyrese raised an eyebrow. A misunderstanding, Miss Vance, your letters were quite clear. Your representative, Mr. Paul King, was crystal clear. 48 hours to cease operations or face legal action and fines. That deadline, by my watch, passed about 3 hours ago. I've been expecting a process server, not a phone call. Paul King was overzealous. Vance stammered. He did not fully represent the board's position. We understand the importance of Olympic training. You understand it now. You mean, Tyrese countered, his voice like chilled steel. Now that your HOA is the subject of national ridicule, now that your peaceful community looks like a petty dictatorship trying to sabotage Team USA, there was a sputtering sound on the other end. Look, Mr. Banks, we are prepared to withdraw the warning letters. There will be no fines, no legal action regarding your training activities. We simply want this to go away. This was it, the moment of capitulation. But Tyrese wasn't just going to let them off the hook. They hadn't just inconvenienced him. They had disrespected his athletes, his mission, and by extension, the country they were training to represent. They had tried to bully him into submission. Withdraw the letters, Tyrese said, his voice deceptively calm. Ms. Vance, that's not nearly enough. You didn't just send letters. You harassed my team. You caused them undue stress and interfered with vital preparations for the Olympic Games. You publicly, through Mr. King, accused us of being a nuisance, of engaging in abominable activities. He paused, letting his words hang in the air. He could hear Vance's agitated breathing. Here's what's going to happen, Tyrese continued, his tone hardening. First, the Ashworth Estates HOA will issue a formal, public apology, not just to me, but to Team USA Powerlifting. This apology will be posted on your official website and your social media channels, and it will acknowledge the error of your actions and the legitimacy of our training here. Second, he pressed on, you will make a significant donation to USA Powerlifting's Athlete Development Fund as compensation for the disruption caused and as a gesture of goodwill, let's say $50,000, to help ensure future athletes don't face this kind of interference. A choked gasp came from the phone. $50,000, Mr. Banks. That's unreasonable. We're a community HOA, not a corporation. Is it as unreasonable as trying to derail a national Olympic effort over some noise? Tyrese shot back. Is it as unreasonable as the legal fees you threatened me with? You wanted to talk about significant financial penalties. Well, now we are Consider it an investment in good public relations. Ms. Vance, because right now your PR is catastrophic. He could almost hear the frantic, whispered consultations happening on her end. Jasmine zoomed in on Tyrese's impassive face. He was no longer the underdog. The video had leveled the playing field and then tilted it dramatically in his favor. And one more thing, Ms. Vance, Tyrese added, Mr. Paul King, I expect his immediate resignation from any and all positions within the HOA. His conduct was unacceptable, and his presence on your board is a liability you can no longer afford. Silence. Then, a sigh of utter defeat from Eleanor Vance. Mr. Banks, we will need to discuss these demands with the board. You do that, Tyrese said. You have 24 hours to meet them in full. If not, I have Jasmine Lee from ESPN here, who has documented this entire affair. We can easily do a follow-up story, perhaps detailing the HOA's refusal to make amends. Imagine how that will play out. Your call, Ms. Vance. He hung up. The garage erupted in cheers. Lifters were high-fiving, hugging. Marcus actually lifted Maria Sanchez off the ground in an exuberant hug. Tyrese allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. He looked at Jasmine. Think they'll cave Jasmine. Lowering her camera, grinned. Coach, they don't have a choice. You didn't just fight back, you changed the narrative. You showed them that the perceived power of their rules and regulations was nothing compared to the power of public opinion when faced with a just cause. The power had indeed shifted. The hunter had become the hunted. Paul King's petty tyranny, amplified by the HOA's bureaucratic arrogance, had run headlong into the resilience of a Bronx-born coach and the undeniable appeal of an Olympic dream. The terrible noise had become a rallying cry. The 24-hour deadline Tyrese had issued to the Ashworth Estates HOA passed with an almost anticlimactic swiftness. The intervening period, however, was anything but quiet for Eleanor Vance and her board members. The viral video continued its relentless march across the internet, spawning news articles, opinion pieces, and even a few satirical cartoons depicting Paul King as a modern-day Goliath being felled by the humble barbell of Team USA. Celebrities and politicians weighed in, almost universally condemning the HOA's actions. The pressure was immense, a digital siege that showed no signs of abating. True to Tyrese's prediction, Eleanor Vance called back well before the deadline expired. Her voice, stripped of its earlier panic, now carried the weary tone of utter capitulation. Mr. Banks, she began. The formality's still there, but underscored with a new, grudging respect. The board of the Ashworth Estates Homeowners Association has convened and reviewed your requests. She stumbled slightly over the word requests, as if it tasted bitter. Tyrese waited, saying nothing, letting the silence amplify her discomfort. He had his team around him, along with Jasmine Lee, her camera unobtrusively recording the culmination of their stand. We have agreed to your terms, Vance stated flatly. A formal apology will be drafted and posted on our website and social media channels by the end of today. It will express our sincere regret for the misunderstanding and affirm our support for Team USA Powerlifting's endeavors. A ripple of quiet satisfaction went through the athletes. Furthermore, Vance continued, her voice tight, the donation of $50,000 to the USA Powerlifting Athlete Development Fund will be processed within 5 business days. We will require the necessary details for the transfer. Tyrese nodded slowly. Jasmine will coordinate with you on that. And finally, Vance sighed, the sound heavy with resignation. Mr. Paul King has tendered his resignation from all his positions within the HOA, effective immediately. This news brought a wider grin to Tyrese's face. It wasn't just about the money or the apology. It was about accountability. Paul King had been the face of the petty tyranny they'd endured, and his removal was a symbolic victory. We trust this resolves the matter to your satisfaction. Mr. Banks, Vance said, a hint of desperation creeping back in, and that perhaps the negative attention towards our community will cease. Tyrese allowed a moment to pass before he responded. Ms. Vance, the apology and the donation are significant steps. Mr. King's resignation is appropriate. As for the negative attention, that will depend on the sincerity of your apology and the future conduct of Ashworth Estates. My team and I didn't seek this fight, but we will always defend our right to train and represent our country. He paused. Once the apology is public and the donation confirmed, I will consider this particular matter closed. I will even issue a statement acknowledging the HOA's corrective actions. But let this be a lesson. Don't mistake dedication for a disturbance, and don't underestimate the power of people standing up for what's right. Yes, Mr. Banks, we understand, Vance replied, her voice barely a whisper. The call ended. The garage, which had been the scene of so much tension and defiant effort, erupted. Shouts of joy, applause, and the spontaneous roar of athletes who had faced down an unexpected adversary and won filled the air. Tyrese found himself enveloped in a group hug, his usually stoic demeanor cracking into a broad, genuine smile. He had not only protected his team's ability to train, but had also taught them a valuable lesson about fighting injustice, not with aggression, but with truth, unity, and strategic use of their collective voice. Within hours, the Ashworth Estates HOA website featured a prominent, carefully worded apology. It was humble, contrite, and explicitly praised the dedication of Team USA Powerlifting. Similar messages appeared on their social media, which were immediately flooded with comments acknowledging the HOA's change of heart. Though many still criticized their initial actions, Paul King vanished from the public eye. His suburban reign of terror brought to an ignominious end. Rumor had it he was considering moving, unable to face the neighbors he had alienated and the community whose reputation he had tarnished. His house, once a symbol of his perceived authority, now felt like a monument to his folly. Jasmine Lee's follow-up piece for ESPN was a masterclass in storytelling. It wasn't just about the conflict and resolution. It was a celebration of the athletes, their coach, and their unyielding spirit. It highlighted the power of social media in modern advocacy and painted Tyrese Banks as a new kind of American hero, strong, principled, and unafraid to challenge entrenched power for a greater cause. The segment ended with stunning visuals of the team training, the clanging weights now a symbol not of nuisance, but of national pride and resilience. The $50,000 donation arrived as promised, a tangible acknowledgement of the HOA's error and a welcome boost to USA Powerlifting's programs. Tyrese ensured it was publicly acknowledged, further cementing the HOA's commitment to their change of course. In the weeks that followed, the atmosphere in the Las Vegas Garage Gym was transformed. The shadow of the HOA dispute was gone, replaced by an even stronger sense of camaraderie and purpose. The team trained harder than ever, fueled by their victory and the outpouring of public support. Their story became a legend within the Olympic community, a testament to what could be achieved when athletes stood together. Tyrese Banks, the coach from the Bronx, had faced down a new kind of opponent in the manicured lawns of Las Vegas. He hadn't used his fists or intimidation, but the power of his convictions, the dedication of his team, and the undeniable truth of their mission. He had stared into the face of petty bureaucracy and made it blink, then crumble, as he watched his athletes prepare for their final training cycles before heading to the Olympics. The sound of the weights, the beautiful, rhythmic, powerful clang of iron, was sweeter than ever. It was the sound of dreams being pursued, of obstacles overcome, and of a victory won not just on the lifting platform, but in the court of public opinion, for the heart and soul of what it meant to strive for greatness. Undisturbed, the HOA had learned a valuable lesson. You don't mess with Team USA, and you certainly don't mess with a coach who carried the fire of the Bronx and the hopes of a nation in his heart. The so-called terrible noise had become an anthem of triumph. Tyrese Banks stood his ground, proving that passion and truth can overcome intimidation. This was a victory for an Olympic coach, his team, and for anyone who's faced injustice. Thank you for watching their incredible journey. If their story inspired you, please like, comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more powerful narratives.